Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the One Shopify podcast, where we explore the untold stories and sharper strategies behind the Shopify ecosystem. So, I'm your host, Aashika, and today we are diving into one of the hottest topics in e commerce right now, which is creative marketing. Creator marketing. So, it's no secret that traditional influencers marketing is losing its shine. Paid partnership can look forced, but budgets are stretched thin, and brands are searching for more authentic, scalable ways to build trust and drive conversions. So, our guest today is someone who is redefining how brands collect and scale UGC content. So, hi, Maxwell. Welcome to.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Ashika. I'm really excited to dive into this. This is definitely one of my favorite topics, just because the creator economy, as you know, is changing really fast, right? Brands are always adapting and, trying to plan ahead for the future, and that's exactly kind of where UGC layers in.
So yeah, to tell about Max, so he is the head of sales at Refunnel. So Refunnel, they automate UGC acquisition and collect for D2C brands. So helping them turn their happiest customers into most powerful marketing engine. So yeah, once again, welcome Max. So
Thank you.
to start with, we see a big shift. So, years ago, UGC was just too nice to have. Now it's the backbone of conversion strategy. So, what changed in D2C landscape and that made authentic creator content so critical?
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question. I would say the shift has really come from what I would say is two places, right? The platform behavior and really consumer behavior. So, what do I mean by that? Well, like for example, platforms like TikTok, right? They really normalize raw, authentic content. People really want to see humans showing real experiences as opposed to kind of in the past where people would, have very much polished studio shoots. Now that kind of customer or consumer behavior has shifted into more of a trusting that peer content, right? And we're seeing that as a trend among all brands. So simultaneously with that going on, we're also seeing D2C budgets getting tighter, right? So the CAC is going up, paid ads are kind of getting all, over the place. They're more volatile, and brands are starting to look for a channel that is a little bit more cost efficient and still renewable. So UGC kind of sits in that intersection of both trust and scale, and that's why it became the backbone of conversion, right? Especially when you use it across ads, PDP galleries, email flows, and really even retargeting.
So you have seen this evolution firsthand from working with top brands to now building automation tools at Recon. What's the most common mistakes you think brands make when trying to scale the UGC campaigns?
Yeah, I think it's really having a manual workflow. So, for example, manually screenshotting every story, tracking creators on spreadsheets. I see this like with every brand I speak to, DMing, usage rights one by one, running kind of these chaotic creator campaigns, right? There's not really this kind of solidified, consolidated workflow. And so, with that in mind, right, it suddenly becomes a non-scalable strategy.
Okay. So let's talk about the concept behind today's episode, the creator flywheel. So what does that actually mean in the context of e-commerce growth?
Yeah, so I like to think of a creator flywheel as a cycle, right? And kind of creating almost like a content engine, right? So the ability to actually leverage something that's just going to organically compile and compound over time and time. Now, the way to do that, of course, is by actually having authentic UGC with real incentives. And I would say generally that's most effective with, as opposed to these macro influencers, maybe leaning into more micro influencers, super fans of the brand, people who just are sporadically posting, right? Just really kind of building that general sense of community.
So when we say flywheel, we are talking about something that keeps compounding over time. I mean, more creators, more content, more conversion. So how does Refunnel make that process sustainable for brands without needing the massive budgets or influencer teams?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. And really like the core of Refunnel is going to be just around that, right? Tracking the UGC in a very much streamlined manner, right? So to my point earlier, capturing all stories, capturing all posts, capturing even if someone just randomly mentions your brand in a one-off audio or post one of your products. Simply streamlining the securing of the usage rights with just a click of a button, right? Running these reward-based challenges where maybe you're not actually paying someone necessarily upfront for content, but you're rewarding them on their impressions or the general performance of that content. And then finally, taking that top content and actually repurposing it, right? Whether it be for Meta or your site, right? And so it's really like the short of it is just streamlining and automating a lot of the tedious tasks that would come with this traditionally.
Right. And there is also this myth that great UGC only comes from top tier influencers. So, but the most high performing brands today are sourcing from customers, micro creators, and even staffs. So,
Mhm.
what's your take on where the most authentic content really comes from?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's one specific demographic. I think that's a misconception where it's like, oh, you have to go that way. I would say it's really a blend, right? Sometimes you're going to get the most authentic content from a customer, right? To your point, where they're just randomly posting on a whim. They may not even have an agenda, right? They just really love the product and they happen to post about it. Other times you may have really great authentic content from a micro creator who has a really loyal following, and those customers or rather followers really believe in that influencers. So point being, it could be a mix and match of both, which is exactly kind of why I advocate again for having this kind of strategy that enables just about any type of personality or demographic of creators to be incentivized.
Right, right. Okay. So UGC often gets a reputation from being cheap content, but that's misleading. It's efficient, not low value. But how can brands strike that balance between saving money and maintaining quality in their creator strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I would emphasize is high production doesn't mean high conversion, right? And I've seen this firsthand where I've worked with brands who have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a shoot, and then funny enough, the best performing ad they ran was some, person in their kitchen filming, right? So with that in mind, right, the way we can find that balance is really just rewarding based off of performance. Again, let's kind of not go into this mindset of just paying someone upfront some obscene amount of money for the content. Let's actually see how it performs, right? And we're seeing this shift where people are actually rewarding these creators based off of the impressions, right? And assigning a kind of earned media value to that. I think that's going to be the best way to go because you don't really know how content is going to perform until you test into it.
Okay. So Refunnel automates a lot of this, but underneath the tech, it's really about psychology, right? So what motivates the customers to actually participate and create content for a brand voluntarily?
Yeah, yeah. So I think I would break it down right into the three motivators, right? The first is going to be identity. People want to share things that actually align with who they are, right? The second I would say would be recognition. So, actually feeling like they're being rewarded appropriately. And then the last is that fair value exchange. So, whether you're rewarding someone with early access to products, maybe store credit, even doing that gamified or tiered reward and unlocking further kind of incentives. So point being, it's going to be kind of up to, again, a blend of different motivators, but you really want to align with that individual.
So we are seeing a lot of D2C brands move from transactional relationship with creators to true communities where, creators feel like co-builders. What's driving that cultural shift?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I missed that.
We're seeing a lot of D2C brands, moving from transactional relationships with creators to true communities where the creators feel like co-builders. So what's driving that cultural shift?
Yeah, I think that this almost goes back to your original question about the flywheel, right? The attraction to the communities, at least in my opinion, right, is going to be that it creates a recurring value, right? When the creator actually feels like they're part of something, they're not just going to post once, right? It's less of that transactional relationship, and they become ambassadors and actual contributors to the brand. And that's, I think, exactly why we're even seeing like a lot of the top partners I work with, they're not just, having these relationships via email. They're creating WhatsApp WhatsApp groups with their creators or Discords, and really fostering that sense of, hey, you're not just this kind of one-off relationship. We want you to be really embedded in our brand and be a part of us. So almost like to a degree, they become an employee.
Okay. So, can you share an example of a brand that nailed this one, that turned their creator network into a real growth engine, not just one campaign of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite campaigns that I often share with prospective brands who are looking at Refunnel is going to be a brand called Frostbuddy. And they really did a great job of highlighting just the ability to generate tons of impressions in still a very much cost-effective manner. And so what they did is, they had a wide net, right? They enabled just about anyone to participate and post for them. And then eventually through that, they were able to identify, let's say, 100 of their best creators. Once they identified those 100 best creators, they actually started to foster that community, and they started to actually have specific challenges for those individuals that still kind of aligned with what the creators wanted, but still kept their budget in mind, right? And so I think it's always like starting with that kind of casting the wide net, slowly kind of funneling in your best creators, and then really creating an intimate relationship with them.
Right, right. So, for the founders who want to start building their own creator flywheel, where do they begin and what's step one?
Yeah, I mean, step one, like I said, is really the enablement side. You want to set up the appropriate foundation to incentivize just about anyone. So, what I would recommend usually is first, like you want to reach out to tons of influencers, right? That's always the first step. We need some kind of core building block. On top of that, I would start to maybe even layer in high value customers, right? Let's take a look at the first party data, maybe people with a strong lifetime value, maybe multi purchasers in the last, let's say, 3 months. And point being, we'd start to really just let someone know there's an opportunity to partner with us, right? We start to get some results and some data in. And then as we start to grow this and iterate, then you would start to identify your top creators. And then you start to really create that scalable strategy where you have constant rewards flowing in and in.
And what's the biggest red flag you see? The thing that tells you a brand's creator strategy is destined to fail before it starts.
Yeah, I think it's one, not looking ahead to the future, right? In the sense of just like, okay, let's just do this campaign. And then, you kind of leave your creators dormant and you're not really reaching out to them. The other thing is just the general workflow, right? If you're relying on spreadsheets and you're just DMing people and you're kind of taking this manual approach, in the long term, you're not going to be scalable, right? The system will fall apart. Or you're just going to be allocating far too much bandwidth. So, in terms of kind of the biggest red flag, it's not actually having that kind of uh, foresight into a scalable strategy.
Right. So, yeah, Maxwell, I think we have come to the end of the pod. And this has been like a master class, turning in community energy into content velocity. So, before we wrap up, where can our listeners learn more about Refunnel and see how brands are, using it to scale UGC?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate the kind words. It's always fun to talk about something you're passionate about. So hopefully I brought some value here. Yeah, in terms of learning more about Refunnel, right? You can always navigate to refunnel.com. We should have a couple of testimonials and case studies there. But really, if you want to check us out, you can always book a demo with us, and we'll actually dive into the live platform. We can give you use cases, walk you through some of the strategies we discussed today, from automatically capturing that content to one-click rights securing to product seeding, you name it, right? So if you want to check us out, that's going to be refunnel.com.
Right. So yes, perfect. Thanks again, Maxwell, for sharing your
Yeah.
insight into the future of creator lead growth. So yeah,
Yeah.
for everyone listening, remember authentic content isn't about hiring influencers. It's about activating your real fans and letting them tell your story. So yes, Max, thank you. Thank you for coming to the pod.
Thanks for having me.
So bye bye. See you all next time.